If someone you love is struggling with addiction, there's a chance that everything you've been doing to try to help them is actually making it worse. The speeches, the ultimatums, the desperate conversations begging them to stop, even ignoring the topic completely. None of these things work in the way you might think. I'm Ryan Suave, and I've been on both sides of this. For many years, I was the one people were concerned about. Now I'm a licensed therapist with over 10,000 hours of clinical experience in addiction and trauma, and I've been sober for over 18 years. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through the real step-by-step framework that can have you actually help your friend instead of pushing them further away. Because if you keep approaching them like most people do, not only are you failing to help, but you might just be part of the reason they're not getting better. Understand what addiction really is. Addiction is not the problem. Addiction is the solution. People use substances and alcohol like medication. They use them for often good reasons, to help them manage their emotions, to regulate their nervous system, to just get through the day. And addiction is really on a spectrum. You know, so many people come to me about themselves or about a loved one saying, I've kept my job, or they still have money in the bank, or my relationship is still together. And those things all may be true. So many people have a vision of an alcoholic or a drug addict being somebody who lives under a bridge. And maybe that's true for some people, but that's a very small percentage of people that suffer from alcoholism and addiction. There's a saying that I really like that I didn't come up with that is, Skid Row is on the inside. It's not just external consequences that determine if someone has a problem with drugs or alcohol. It's not necessarily even the frequency of use. It's that they continue to use in the face of consequences. And often these consequences are what they're experiencing internally. When you can really understand that it's not the problem, it's the solution, then you can start helping to explore what the problem actually is. In the Alcoholics Anonymous literature, there's a doctor, Dr. Silkworth, who wrote an opinion. And one of the things he said in the opinion is that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I 100% believe that that effect is relief. And so the question becomes, relief from what? And when we can think about addiction and alcoholism in this way, we can stop seeing people through the lens of just bad behaviors or bad choices. Now, they might be having bad behaviors and making bad choices, but to what end? What underneath is driving this? When we can start from this place, it tends to help open up a conversation. And before you have a conversation, regulate yourself. Talking to someone that you love about a problem they might have, or some things that they may have done that have affected you or other people that you love or they love, can be really scary. It can be really hard and challenging. You know, somewhere deep down, I really believe that these people, that the person that you love is aware that they're not matching up to the life that they want to lead, or they're not impacting others in a positive way. They understand that. And there's often a lot of shame, fear, guilt. And so it never helps to add shame, guilt, or fear to the conversation. That could have them potentially seeking relief even more. And so when you can show up in a way that you're calm, relaxed, unattached to the outcome, again, this is not easy, but when you can do that, not only will you have your emotions regulated, but you can help them regulate emotions in a difficult conversation. I'm sure we've all had experiences where you've been in some place in public, maybe an elevator or a store, where a stranger that you're standing next to, you can sense that they're not in a good mood, that they're upset, that maybe you just have this thought like, I don't want to approach this person or upset them. And conversely, I imagine all of us have had experiences where there's people that we've met that you just want to be around. You might not even be able to put words to it, but it feels safe and comfortable to be around them. And this is the way we want to approach it. Again, it can be really challenging because you might be really scared, upset, maybe angry. And so before going into a conversation, regulate yourself. There's a lot of tools out there. You can use simple breaths, breathing in through the nose, exhaling gently through softly pursed lips like you're blowing through a straw, repeating that several times, inhaling to the count of 4 and exhaling to the count of 8, and repeating that several times. Just be aware of what you're bringing into the conversation. If you don't do that, then rather than helping them, you may find yourself just managing your own anxiety, worries, or fears about the situation. Stay with curiosity, not confrontation. This again can be really hard. The person that you're talking to might come across as very confrontive themselves. But meeting confrontation with confrontation just increases the confrontation. You want to lead with curiosity. Probably if this is a person that you're going to talk to about a problem with alcohol or drugs or some other addictive behaviors that you've seen, this has been going on for some time. And two things may be occurring. They may not want to be seen as this, even if they're aware that's going on. There may be a lot of shame and guilt, which can actually have them orient in a very defensive posture. And or if addiction is the solution, not the problem, if the addiction is more like the medication, then this conversation is leading to having their medication taken away. They can become very protective over it. Depending on the acuity of their addiction, they might be in a place that if they stop today, they're going to be extremely uncomfortable. And if this is what they've been using to manage their lives, chances are this is the only thing that they found to be able to do that. They're not going to want to give it up very easily. So be curious, learn about them, try to understand why they're using it, what's driving underneath, what are their goals in life. Ask questions, be curious, and don't just catch them off guard with a conversation. Set up a time to have this conversation. Don't do it over text, or if you can possibly avoid it, don't do it over the phone. Even if you have to do it over the phone or video conference and can't do it in person, set a time and find an environment which is conducive to having a difficult conversation. And if they get defensive, don't get defensive yourself. Just tell them you're here to listen, to learn about them. Let them know you care about them no matter what. When we lead with curiosity and love, it creates a much larger opening. And fear rarely works. We can almost never scare somebody sober. In fact, many people are drinking or using because they're managing symptoms of fear. So adding fear to the situation is just going to multiply it. It doesn't tend to work or work very well. Enabling is not a bad word. I might catch some flack for this. Maybe it sounds controversial because we always tend to hear that we want to stop enabling the person, meaning stop supporting their addiction, stop hiding things for them or giving them money or supporting them in ways that allow them to continue. And of course, we want to find ways that we're not enabling them and enabling their addiction. But we do want to find ways to help them enable their recovery. Who am I going to be? How am I going to show up? What's going to occur and not occur in our relationship such that it makes it easier for this person to find a path to recovery? In therapy, we really want people to develop an internal motivation for healing and wellness. Unfortunately, so many people that are using drugs and alcohol are not necessarily in their best state of thinking. Their cognitive ability to make healthy choices may be limited at best. And so we can enable them into recovery by supporting them with some external motivation, by establishing boundaries, showing how we are going to show up, who we are going to be, what we will help them with, what we won't help them with. And it is so important to develop these clear boundaries. And boundaries come really in two forms. There's external boundaries. External boundaries are what us in relation to another person. And then there's internal boundaries, which is really about how we manage our own emotions and our own internal states. When we can have clear boundaries, both internally and externally, then we can kind of set the playing field and everybody can know the rules of engagement. Because we establish boundaries does not mean the other person will abide by them. In fact, people will break through our boundaries all the time. It is not other people's job to maintain our boundaries. It's ours. So what does that mean? If they break a boundary, it means I remove myself from the situation in some way. Either I stop supporting in the way that I was, or I don't engage anymore, but it's my job to manage my own boundaries. And these boundaries, knowing that they're clear, a clear set of boundaries will not only help their well-being and path to recovery, but your own. Know what real help looks like. In the most acute cases, people need to go to the hospital or to a medical detox to comfortably and safely be able to come off certain types of drugs or alcohol, but not everybody needs that. When we look at the American Society of Addiction Medicine, they lay out the levels of care for people with substance use and alcohol use disorders. And these level of cares start at the highest level, which is really a medical setting. Again, this is where somebody goes for a medical detox, right? They need to be physically and medically stabilized while they're coming off and withdrawing from the substances or alcohol. After that, there's residential treatment. This is what people often see as the 28-day model. And I will tell you that as a side, that 28 days is not what everybody needs. Treatment is not time-based, it's needs-based. And different people can have different needs, which take a different amount of time. But residential treatment is the time in which people are in a structured setting, away from substances, away from alcohol, in a safe, protected environment where they can begin to stabilize emotionally. And then we move into outpatient care, where people may attend a treatment setting every day for 5 or 6 days a week, or attend groups for 3 hours a day for 3 or 4 days a week and have individual therapy, or there's just individual therapy in psychiatry with medication management. The point is that there's these different levels of care. Just because someone admits to, or we see that they have a problem with addiction, doesn't mean they need to start at the very top. It also doesn't mean that they're appropriate to just start in outpatient care, seeing a therapist. And this may not be something that you're able to find out, to figure out on your own. So a pathway would be to get an evaluation through a therapist, a psychiatrist, an addiction medicine doctor, and really help them see what level of care they're most appropriate for. If you have someone that's completely resistant to any sort of treatment or therapy, 12-step meetings are available all over the world, all the time, in person, virtually. It could be Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. There's all different kinds. There's Rational Recovery, there's Dharma Recovery. These are peer support groups that can really help the person learn about addiction and get some support so that they can begin their journey to healing. This isn't something that's just in lieu of therapy or treatment. It's a great thing to do in conjunction, and it can be a great onboarding step for people that really don't know where they stand or maybe aren't willing to take a more drastic step. We just know this: addictions rarely improve on their own. Over time, they tend to get worse. The earlier we can intervene on them, generally the easier they are to treat. But what I know after many, many years in this field and working with thousands of people is there's almost no case that's too acute. I have seen people that we thought weren't going to make it another day who found recovery and began a new life. Play the long game. Just because someone says no to getting help in this first conversation doesn't mean it's a no forever. Don't treat it like it's something so fragile. This could be an opening to a much longer conversation. And that's the most important thing. We really want to build a relationship with the person we love where we can openly talk about what's going on. It's not your job to fix them, to cure them, to carry their weight. This all falls into the boundaries that you're going to set. The safer for them it is to talk to you or to the other people around you, the better chance you're going to have for recovery overall. And even if it was determined that the person needed to go to a residential treatment center and they agreed to go today, that doesn't mean that tomorrow they're not going to want to leave. It doesn't mean that in a month from now, they're not going to be challenged with some stressors or fears or other emotional states that want them to seek relief. In fact, that's probably almost going to be a guarantee that that happens. A therapist I used to work with always said that when you get sober, there's good news and bad news. The good news is you get your feelings back. The bad news is you get your feelings back. In their healing process, a lot of it is, as I've talked about so many times, is learning how to feel bad, to be able to build that distress tolerance, to be able to build an emotional resilience that allows you to lean into life, not only on the good days, but on the really hard days. And when someone can do this, and it takes time, and it doesn't just take time, it takes attention, and it often takes a village. Rarely are people getting sober all on their own. They're part of a system. That system may include you as their friend, it may be their family. And when the system also begins to heal, to take an active part in not only their recovery, but finding their own recovery, finding how they may contribute not only to the problem, but how they can contribute to the recovery, everybody gets better. A rising tide rises all boats. And there's 12-step programs for loved ones. There's Al-Anon and Al-Anon. There's programs that you can go to that support you, and not only in helping the person who's in addiction, but building an even stronger, more resilient life yourself. Treatment and healing is not an event. It takes time. Healing, attention, discipline, and practice. It's not going to be a straight line. It can be up and down, and that's okay. That's what life is too. But stay with your friend. This doesn't mean that they don't have accountability and responsibility for things that they've done that have harmed you or others, but it can support them in having a fresh start. Believe me, there are more people in the world than you know that could use a fresh start. You might be one of them. And as always, ask for help. If you don't know what you're doing, find a professional. Attend one of these meetings yourself and raise your hand and ask for how you can best support somebody. Anytime in this, if you find that the person you love is unresponsive, you feel like they're an immediate or imminent harm to themselves or other, they're talking about suicide or violent acts, immediately call emergency services. Do not take that on your own. Do not take the talk of suicide or self-harm. Do not take it lightly. That is not a burden for you to carry. This is not something that you need to threaten the person with, but it's just a reality. That's a very clear boundary to set. And above all else, we want the person, we want you, we want their loved ones to be safe. The ones who make it through this and find recovery can almost always point to at least one person who showed up differently for them. One person who did not lecture, who did not enable their addiction, who did not disappear. That person may be you, but only if you know what you're doing and not just guessing your way through it. Please share this video with someone who needs it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.